What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and in this video today we're going to be going over how boss fights should work in Halo Infinite, what my expectations are for boss fights in Halo Infinite, and what I want to really see out of these boss fights in terms of the actual reasonable design. So with all that in mind, let's go ahead and get right into it. So first, to go ahead and preface this video, let's talk about previous boss fights in Halo. Back in Halo 2 was when boss fights were really first introduced, and the boss fights were with the Heretic Leader, which was in Mission 3, I believe, with the Arbiter, and it was a pretty decent boss fight. It was pretty short depending on how effective you were at finding the right clone. And then later on in the game, in the last mission, you fight Tartarus, which can be a tricky boss fight depending on how effective Johnson's AI is at actually doing damage to Tartarus. Then in Halo 3, there is the boss fight, well, quote, boss fight against Guilty Spark in the last mission as well. And this is a pretty bare bones boss fight. I can barely say it's a boss fight, I just kind of air quoted that. But then in Halo 4, you will have a quick time event against the Diet Act, which ends up being a pretty lame excuse at a boss fight. And then in Halo 5, there's the Warden Eternal boss fight, which you end up doing, I think, like 8 or 9 times throughout the campaign. It's a pretty good boss fight, but the amount of repetitions that there was with that singular boss is what made it not very good in the end. Now, I do think Halo 5 has the best boss fights out of all the Halo games. I just wish there would have been a different boss besides Warden Eternal. Warden Eternal was good for the first couple times you fought him, but at the end of the campaign it just felt like it was a filler to make the game drag on longer, which is kind of frustrating. But overall, pretty good boss, and that's kind of what my expectations are going into Halo Infinite with boss fights. So back in April or March, earlier this year, I can't remember which month it was in particular, they decided to release some concept art for some of the bosses that are going to be in the game, and let me say they look awesome. Now, the main brute that I want to be looking at here is going to be one of the Brew Brothers, and the unique thing about this one is that he has Spartan Locke's helmet on his left shoulder blade, and then it looks like maybe a piece of the Arbiter's like helmet or some sort of armor on his like thigh, which is almost like kind of like a war trophy or some sort of like intimidation. And then if you look even closer at his necklace, it seems to be Spartan Fingers, which I'll be honest, that's pretty intimidating, and he is probably the boss I'm looking forward to fighting the most, just because, I mean, if he was already able to tango with Spartans before and kill him, you know, I mean, I guess it kind of sets an expectation for the fight that this guy's gonna be aggressive and he's gonna want to, you know, make you a trophy as well. So I think the conceptual designs are really cool. Now, in terms of the combat, I'm not really too sure about how the combat with bosses is going to work, especially Brute Chieftains, so I can't really say how I want it to play yet, but I definitely want, you know, these boss fights to feel really hard. I want them to be tricky, and I want you to feel intimidated going into these fights. I don't want it to necessarily be a Souls level difficulty of, you know, boss fight, but I do want it to be a challenge that's going to make you think outside the box and change up the gameplay elements a little bit and make you use, you know, that nice sandbox that they gave us to fight these guys. And honestly, I feel like if they do that and have all these bosses with unique things, this game is going to be awesome, and I really am so excited. My main concerns with these boss fights is that they're all going to feel the same, just like with a different brute skin. I kind of don't want to repeat a Halo 5 where, you know, you may be fighting a different boss, but it ends up playing exactly like the other one. I want these fights to make you work in different and unique ways. I almost kind of want it to be like Doom Eternal's bosses, where, you know, where each one has their own unique thing that makes you have to play outside the box. I think that'd be really cool. And honestly, with how 343 has been doing things, I think it could be awesome. I just want to make sure that these boss fights are actually fun and engaging and not just like a mental roadblock like, oh, this brute just takes 5 more bullets to kill or something like that. I want these brutes to be bosses. I want them to have characterization and story with them. And that was seen with that one brute with the Spartan Fingers and Locke's helmet on it. Like, I want all of them to have some sort of story told with them as a character. But yeah, those are my expectations for the boss fights in Halo Infinite. Let me know what you guys want in your boss fights down in the comments section down below. I will be responding to all of you, so let's have a nice discussion down there. But that's all I got for this video, guys. If you did enjoy, stay hydrated. We'll see you in the next video.